Here's a motorbox update. I've been epoxying all the top parts. Yesterday I did like epoxied this beam, and there was a thin strip here and some parts in there. It's kind of hard to see. So I got that done yesterday, and I also epoxied these two supports. They need to be epoxied together before then I can epoxy them on here. So I did that yesterday as well. And today I did these two parts and these angled pieces here. And then I just epoxied in these two supports with their blocking. All these have little blocking members, and so got that done today, and the only thing I have left to do is this little piece and this little piece here. Kind of almost forgot about. Oh, yesterday I also did this one, that beam, and then this beam. So yeah, it's going to take me 3 stages to epoxy all this now. I thought I was done, but then I forgot about those two little side pieces, so I will do that next time I work on this. So yeah, it just takes a lot of clamps. It's always good to have lots of clamps, and so I'm using quite a few of them with both of these stages of epoxy. So yeah, the motor box, once I get those epoxied, then I'm going to start working on finishing basically the plywood layers. And so I'd like to try to get this mostly done before the end of the year. We'll see if that happens or not. Because after I get it all epoxied and the top done, then I've got to encapsulate everything. So a lot of work on this motor box for me. So I'm working on finishing the motor box now. All the supporting members in here are all epoxied up, and so now this top piece I got cut, rough cut. I'll have to trim the edges. But what I did is I put an angle on this. So this is 3/8 inch. I'm going to put 3/8 inch on here, and I put an angle. So this piece, I won't need to put any kind of an angle. It'll just be able to go right up, essentially flush with that angle. So now what I'm doing is working on this piece. I originally thought I was going to have to do like a 1/4 inch layer of plywood and then put an 1/8 inch on top of that because just for the bend, but then I realized I can just use this 9mm, or roughly 3/8, because that's what I'm doing the decking, and I'm just going to use 3/8 on that. So I'm like, well, and this curve is similar curve to the boat deck, so actually it's going to work great, save me some time. So once it comes time to epoxy this, I'll actually screw it in, but I'll clamp it also, and it should epoxy find all the supporting members under here. So what I'm doing here is a form of spiling to get this, because you can see this edge is straight. This edge is straight except it's bent, but you can see there's a gap here. So what I want is this piece to have that same curve. And the way you do that is you just take any kind of a piece, it doesn't matter how wide it is, and to get this curve, hopefully you can see the curve on here. I'll bring the camera closer here in a minute, or my phone, not a camera. And but the way to do this is I just took this spacer with my pencil and I just ran it right along this edge, and then it puts the exact curve. And then this is a template piece. I'm going to make a template first before I actually cut it out of this 9mm. And so when you do spiling, it's actually a similar way when you're planking a boat, but you don't necessarily run it all along like that because you probably don't have a good edge to do that. But you make tick marks along the way when you do it, and then you take some kind of batten or something, and then to fill the points in between, and that's actually how you do spiling for planking. So working on this now, and I will have to do the same kind of thing down here because I'm going to do a 3/8 inch piece on here, and I will cut an angle in this edge also, and then this piece will butt up against it. So a little tricky because I got to do spiling on both sides of this piece, which actually obviously this isn't wide enough, but I'll do another narrower piece and then kind of put them together to lay it on the actual plywood. So that's what's going on so far. So obviously I forgot to show it closer to show that pencil mark before I cut it. But you can imagine, just a pencil mark. So here's this template piece cut now, and you can see when you do it like that, it just fits perfectly up in there. And so this edge of the template is good. So again, I'll work on this other one and see how I can use these to cut the real one. And what I will do, just like planking, is spiling like this, you get the line close, but then you still got to fine tune, at least I did. Because when I did the planking on the top sides, my gaps, I wanted them as tight as possible. So that takes a lot of fine tuning, and I did that with my bench belt sander. There are different ways to do it, but anyway, so I imagine I'll have to do the same here. I'll cut it a little bit too wide with the right curve, and then I'll just, with my bench belt sander, I'll just work it slowly. One side will be fine, but then the other side I'll get it so it'll fit down in there. Just work it until it fits down in there. I'm working on this bottom half template to get this curve. I've got this part rough cut now, and I put the same angle on this bottom as I did on this top piece here. And one thing, put an angle like that actually makes it so when I put this, again, these are 9mm, but when I put this flush up against there's a little bit of a lip. I'll just sand that off because this is gonna get all sealed up good and then get covered with vinyl. And so I'm not worried about that, because like these edges, plywood, my plan is to put a little radius on all these edges, and then I'll seal those up good, and it shouldn't cause any problem. I know normally you don't like to have exposed edges of plywood if you can avoid it, but like on the decking, I won't do that. The decking will have an edge. Well, I'll back it off and I'll put some kind of a strip in there to cover that. But for something like this, it will be fine. So that is one thing that is a little bit of a downside to this, at least this method that I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and do the same method on this bottom piece. I haven't drawn the line yet, and so I just take my pencil and I'll just run it, just drag it across here like this. Not breaking the lead. And that'll do is give me finish it like that. Give me the curve that I need for this bottom piece, and I'll bring this up here so you can see that a little better. So now you can see, oops, this line right along there, and it'll basically, when I cut it, it'll match the curve that it needs to have. Let me move this over here so you can see better. So that'll make it fit right up against there. So I'll be working on that. So I've got the bottom cut now, and can see how it just conforms now to that curve, because you know this thing is, oh, it's hard, but it's got a curve on it. And, so like that, and this top template. Put these both together to make one piece, but you can see how it, and there's the top one fitting in. So you see I have a curve and a curve to make that piece fit in there. Here's an update on the motor box top parts. So I've got these pieces cut out. I still need to trim around the edges in the back and over here. These sides are fairly flush. I need to do a little trimming there, and same with the front here. But what I decided to do is, so this is 3/8, this is 3/8, or 9mm, whatever. And this is 6mm. And so what I decided to do is do 6mm here, and then I'm going to do 2 layers of that. Because when I cut the angle here, having 6mm here and 9mm here makes this actually a nice edge. But that's not the main reason I did it. But the main reason I did it, I wanted a 1/2 inch anyway on this top. So 2 6mm, or roughly 1/2 inch, 12mm. And so doing 2 6mm like this will give me that 1/2 inch thickness. And then what I was able to do is cut the angle on the 6mm part. So now when I put that in there, it'll still be a nice edge. And if you remember, I'm gonna have 3 cup holders here, and that's why I wanted 12mm, roughly 1/2 inch thick here's, because again, I want people to be able to sit on this, because if somebody's tubing or something and somebody wants to face back, they can actually sit on this and face back and watch. But I'm gonna have 3 cup holders here, which will then weaken this a little bit. So anyway, that's why I wanted a little bit thicker here. So now all I need to do, I've got these, all the holes drilled and the screws in there. Now, of course, I'll need to glue these down, but for these parts, and then I just need to drill the holes and screws for this piece, and then I'll be ready to epoxy this up after I trim. So that's an update where things are at this time. So I've got the motor box all assembled and epoxied, all the layers, including the 2 6mm here. And I went ahead and clamped as much as I could. The screws really help actually provide clamping, but they don't provide enough. If you can get clamps on it, helps. So my next steps on this are going to be, I'm going to fill in these countersunk screw holes on the outside with wood filler. On the inside, I'm not going to do that. I'll just seal it up with encapsulating epoxy. But on the outside, I'd like to do wood filler before I seal this up with encapsulating epoxy. And then also I'm gonna put a radius on these edges, and I'm not exactly sure how I'm gonna do that. I know using a router would work well, but I don't know if I need to do that or not. I'm thinking I could probably just do it by hand somehow. I've got to see about that. So, because I'd like to put it on all these edges, have a nice radius, and I may need to use my router for that. So we'll see. And I also will put a radius on this. Now I can't use my router here because of the angle, but it's all put together now, and I also need to drill the 3 holes for the cup holders. I do have those. Now, give me a second. So here's what those look like, and there'll be 3 of them right here. I've got to confirm the outer diameter of these, and then my intent is I'll get a hole saw that is roughly that size, and so yeah, these are just stainless steel. They do have a drain hole in the bottom for moisture gets in there. There's a kind of a rubber bottom there, which is nice, and it looks like a little bit of a sticky gasket, which remember, I'm going to have vinyl. My intent is to put vinyl to be on the seats, but I also want it over the motor box with a little bit of padding. So these will sit on, of course, on the outside of the vinyl. It's the lip here. So I'll go ahead and take these clamps off so you can get a good view of it. Not all of these. Clamps, and more clamps. Long ones, these are 24 inch, these are 12. I have some 36 inch ones also. I have 3 of those. But, just lost the pad on that one. I've got 40 or more of these 6 inch ones. 40 to 45, I forget how many exactly, but oops. These up here for now. Was a spacer board I had to kind of hold the back. Remember the back on the bottom, it's actually the front, I suppose, of the motor box, but there's nothing holding that position. Well, I had a spacer board in there because it was trying to close up a little bit. I just wanted to hold it. Help it hold its shape while the epoxy is drying. These over here for now. Here. And so there we have it. Just to kind of view inside. Careful. And I tried to wipe, you can see I missed some spots there. I tried to wipe underneath as the epoxy was dripping some. Now one note, what I did for these top layers, I actually used System 3 silver tip epoxy, and I thickened it with microspheres. That's the same epoxy that I use that for the topsides planking also. I did it, same thing, thickened it. And the reason I use that on here is because the working time, I used the slow cure, or I got the slow cure hardener, which gives me like 45 minutes working time, which is nice. In the garage here, I have my heater set at 70-ish degrees by the time it stabilizes. So with that kind of temperature, I get a real good working time, because there's quite a bit of places that when you're epoxying, and I still did 2 different rounds of this. I wasn't able to do all these at once, but it just gives you time, because if you use regular epoxy with a fast hardener, I mean, you got to work kind of fast, and So I went ahead and did that for these, and that's why it's white. I did not darken it because I didn't really need to. It's, you don't see it, but so I'm gonna seal all this up on the inside, and you can see these 3 spots here where the cup holders will go, and so it should work well. So yeah, it's coming along nicely. It is getting heavy though. So I'm gonna need help getting it back in the boat. I've been able to do it myself so far, but now I think it's a little bit heavy. So I'll have to, once it comes time to put in the boat, have my wife kind of help me, or my wife help me, or maybe I'll get my neighbor to help me. So.